Hey everyone, welcome to my packing video. This is the 2019 edition of Packing to Go to a Crop Flying Edition. I did do a version of this for driving to a crop back in March 2019, I think. I will link everything I talk about that I can find in the description box below, whether it be an organizational item or a video I'm referencing or a website I talk about. So if you're wondering about something, it probably is linked in the description box below. If it is not, drop me a comment and I will set you up with a link, or a link with the closest thing I can find currently available. All right, so a couple of things before I get into this first part of the video. Number one, a lot of this is going to be very similar to what I've already done before in my previous packing videos. So if you are watching that, just know a lot of it is going to be repeated here. There is going to be some new stuff just because of different things I do now than I did a year ago. Number two, this video is probably going to be pretty long. They usually top out at about an hour. I can't guarantee any shorter for this one. I talk a lot. So if you're someone who doesn't like to be chatted at for 20 minutes, probably not the video for you. I do feel it holds a lot of really good information. I know I started making these because I was going to crops, and I always feel more accomplished when I can be put together when I have as much information. It might be information that doesn't pertain to me, but just hearing it and hearing other people talk about packing to go to crops helps me figure out what works best for me. And that's my third thing. Everything I'm going to talk about here, everything I'm going to show you is what works for me. If it doesn't work for you, that's fine. No one expects you to do exactly as I say. That's not like I'm not running a Dave Ramsey course where I expect you to follow A, B, C to get to D. You need to do what works for you. If some of the organizational stuff like terrifies you or like stifles your creativity, obviously don't do it. Just take away what works for you and leave the rest. All right. So with all of that said, I'm going to do an introductory portion where I'm going to talk about pre-planning and just the whys and where-to-fors, and then I'm going to show you each bag I'm going to pack individually, and then I will come back at the end and kind of just give an overview with a couple of tips I found work well for me. So let's go ahead and get started. And the first thing I'm going to say is what is a crop, because I realize not everyone knows what a crop is. Basically, it's a gathering of people whose sole or main purpose is to scrapbook, similar to a quilter's bee or a sewing circle. Some of the crops are an afternoon or an evening. They can be a full day. They can be a full weekend. Some people even have them where they're a full week. They have cruises where you can crop and do scrapbooking classes with niche celebrities in the scrapbooking world. They have a whole bunch up in Canada run by a scrapbooking magazine. Scrapbook stores have them, churches have them, people who run scrapbooking stores have them outside of the actual scrapbooking store. Like they may have a day crop in their store, and then they'll do weekend ones at a hotel. Now, a lot of people are like, oh, there are no crops near me. I find if you go to Google or Bing or whatever search engine you use on the computer, or even say, hey, on one of the Facebook groups that are geared towards scrapbooking, I live in such and such an area. Does anyone know of a scrapbooking crop in my area? Also know that both Stamp and Scrap Expo and the CKC Expos offer a sit and crop as one of their quote unquote classes, where basically you pay, I want to say it's like $25, $30, and you get access to a ballroom and you can just sit and scrap all day. I've done that a couple of times with some friends of mine and we've had a really good time. So those are all what we would call a crop, just different versions of it. And obviously each version is more expensive or less expensive depending on length and where it is and stuff like that. So a lot of people ask, why bother going to a crop? I can just stay at home and scrapbook and I don't have to pack up all my stuff. And that's absolutely true. And if you have zero interest in going to a crop, that is fine. No one should ever make you feel like you have to go to a crop. If that's something that causes you anxiety or you just have zero interest in, that's totally fine. But for me, and I can only obviously explain my reasons for going to a crop, and one of them is, you know what? It's kind of nice to go and talk to someone who has zero problem talking to you about paper for an hour, or who can discuss the difference between Maggie Holmes and Amy Tangerine and knows who those two people are. So it's nice being able to talk to someone who has the same hobby as you, and not just necessarily always online versus in person, because very few people have scrapbooking friends in real life. Some do obviously, but most of us do not. The second reason is I like to go scrapbooking to a place where there is no laundry or dishes or a child that needs to be picked up. As much as we can say, oh, I'm going to spend the weekend scrapbooking, or hey, I'm going to take an hour or two and focus on my scrapbooking, real life intervenes and laundry calls your name and your children literally call your name, and you feel like, oh, I really should be doing this or I really should be doing that. When you're at a crop, you can't do laundry, you can't do the dishes, and taking that afternoon or evening or day or weekend of self-care and rejuvenating yourself through your craft is very helpful to me as an adult human being. All right, now we get to the one that causes a lot of issues, and that is cost. So obviously the evening and or day crops that I was talking about cost far less. These are ones you would obviously drive to. So you're not incurring airfare, you're not incurring hotel stay and stuff like that. I will say I do not have a large budget. I know you're all like, oh, you get to fly to a crop. I'm like, I was gifted, and I ask as to be gifted Southwest airline gift cards, and that is how I afford to be able to fly to a crop once a year. It's also my main vacation. Like I'm not really going anywhere. I'm going to Ohio. It's for a wedding. But I'm not really going anywhere else on vacation. And that's a personal choice. When it comes to hotel rooms, I budget it into my budget. I choose to do less of one thing and have this put aside for money instead of that. I pull out money starting like basically a year ahead. So I know at some point, I may not have a specific crop in mind, but I know at some point I am going to want to go to a crop. So I budget that into my monthly budget to put aside that money specifically for my scrapbooking. And that is money that goes towards going to a crop, because that's something that's important to me. So obviously, everyone has a different level of importance and a different level of cost and what is available and what isn't. And I will say, there are other options out there. Like I said, maybe you don't go to a weekend crop. Maybe you go to a day crop. Maybe you go onto the Facebook groups and say, hey, I live in, Chicago, Illinois. Does anyone else live in Chicago, Illinois who wants to maybe join me to make our own crop? You can get an Airbnb for a weekend with 3 other ladies and each agree to make a meal and split the cost of the Airbnb. Because the thing with doing an Airbnb is you don't need the fancy place near all of the tourist attractions that's going to cost more. You can get the Airbnb that's just a split level ranch out in the middle of Podunk, but within an hour's driving of where you live, USA, and it's not going to cost as much money as, say, one in downtown Boston. And then split the cost of that, and you're cooking one meal, and then you obviously have breakfast and lunch food, and you're talking a far more economical deal than staying at a hotel for a weekend. So that's just an option I'm throwing out there for those of you who say, you don't know if you can afford it. And I totally get that. And that's an absolutely legitimate concern. So if you want to go to a crop and you don't think there's something out there, talk about it on the Facebook groups, because a lot of women feel the same way and a lot of women have ideas. So just do some communication, and I think a lot of what you might have as questions will be answered. All right, so that's all I've got for kind of like the whys and where-to-fors. In my next section, I'm going to start talking about pre-planning for your crop. All right, so now let's talk about pre-planning. Now, as I said, I do a lot of pre-planning. You do not have to do as much as I do, or if you need to do even more than I do, that is okay. A lot of this, as I've said before, is just what works for you, and that's what you need to do. I like to have enough planning that when I get to my crop, I am ready to go. I can be as productive as I want to be. And I'll be totally honest, there are some times when I get to the crop and I am not very productive because I'm having fun chatting and looking at other people's stuff and learning new techniques and all of that. And that's totally fine. I just want to make sure that I have the tools I need in order to have the crop I want to have. Because no matter what, you're spending money and you want to get what you feel is your money's worth. And that is different for everyone. So the first thing I do when I'm starting to plan for my crop is I draw up a schedule. Now, I've talked about this in my other packing videos. This is not a schedule I'm going to follow. This is not something I'm going to take out once I get to the crop and say, oh, it's 7:15. I should be working on my third layout. Not in any way, shape, or form. I just use this as a baseline for... Sorry, one of the dogs has decided to go nut-bari, so I apologize for the background noise. I just use this as a baseline for the amount of stuff I'm going to bring. So I start it off when it starts and I run it through the whole weekend, the whole day, whatever it happens to be, as long, in each individual crop. So this particular crop starts at 5 p.m. on a Thursday and runs through 5 p.m. on Sunday. Okay. So I have giving myself an hour for setup, then an hour for dinner, and then 4 hours to work on layouts. Now, because I make these videos, I know on average it takes me about an hour to make a layout and then clean up from it. And I like to clean up between each layout. So on Thursday, I could get 4 layouts done. Now, does that mean I need to make 4 layouts? Absolutely not. Does it mean if I make 1 layout and that's totally okay? Or even 0 because I'm having fun and talking with people? Totally, totally fine. I just wanted to make sure I've got the amount of stuff I need if I am really productive, because sometimes that happens as well. Sometimes I'm just feeling the mojo and I am cranking those layouts out. Sometimes I'm having a glass of wine and having just as much fun. And either is totally okay. So I do this throughout the entire weekend. I've got Friday, I've got Saturday, I've got Sunday, mixing in going for food, mixing in working out, mixing in hanging out with my friends. Like one of the nights I gave 3 hours for dinner. Now, does that specific night I have to go out to dinner and then spend another 2 hours with my friends? Absolutely not. But I know at some point we're going to have a larger meal, or we're going to go do an activity and it's going to take a chunk of time. So I go through this whole process for the whole weekend and it takes maybe 5-10 minutes. And I come to the conclusion that I could possibly make 34 layouts. I will be totally honest, I've never made 34 layouts at a weekend crop, ever. And I don't expect to now. But for me, that's the goal I try to do for how many layouts I bring to make. So I'm going to bring with me 34 or 35 kits or layouts to potentially make at this crop. Do I have to make that many layouts? As I said, no. If I get just a couple and just end up chit-chatting with my friends, that is totally fine. I'm not going to be disappointed because I don't make 34 layouts. It just gives me an idea of how much to bring. I know there is zero chance I could make 60 layouts, so there's zero reason for me to bring enough stuff to make 60 layouts. So this for me, when I get this schedule down, that gives me a goal for how many to bring. And so once I have my schedule set and I have an idea of how many kits I want to make, now I need to decide on what type of kit I want to bring. So I know you're saying, I don't want to make kits. Totally fine. You don't have to make kits if that doesn't work for you. For me personally, I find that bringing already put together kits works a lot better when I'm trying to just easily get layouts done. So there are several different types of kits you can bring. You can bring a page kit, which is a kit with just enough paper and embellishments to make one layout, or maybe 1 to 2, depending on how much you pack in there. You can bring a larger kit. You can either use a kit that comes from a kit club, whether it be something like the hip kits where it's a preset style, or scrap room where it's more of a page kit style, or the wild hair kits, or the secret not secret kit club, which are both curated kits, meaning you give them your likes and dislikes and they make a kit based off of that. So there are many different ways you can go about that. And then there's also just scrapbooking by collection. This is especially true if you organize your normal craft room by theme or color rather than by manufacturer. Because if you store by manufacturer or by collection line, it's really easy just to grab that bag of, say, Pink Fresh Studio, chuck a couple photos in there, and you've got yourself a kit. If you have all your birthday stuff together, it's a little bit harder to, I've got my Iris case of birthday supplies, I'm going to bring that for one layout. So by reducing the amount of decisions you need to make at the crop, that helps make your life a little easier when you're at the crop. So personally, for this layout, for this crop, I am going to be doing page kits. It has started to pour outside, so if you hear that, I do apologize. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about the weather. All right, so I'm going to kind of go through me making a page kit. So as I said, for this crop, I've decided to make 34 page kits rather than what I normally do, which is, as I said, grab these Pink Fresh Studio, and this is a mix of Let Your Heart Decide, Be You, and Dream On. Now, normally what I would do is I would take 2 to 3 sets of photos and put them in here and just use this manufacturer kit as the stuff for 3 sets of photos. This particular time around, I've decided to do something different and make page kits. So far I have made 20 of them. I have to make another 15. And right now I'm going to share with you how I make a page kit, because it doesn't take a long time. I don't spend a ton of time working on it. I just kind of go with my gut. So I have this photo right here, and it has a lot of neutrals in the background and then a lot of blues and purples in the front. It's pretty non-wowzers. It's not a fabulous photo. It doesn't necessarily have significant meaning. It's just a little story that I want to tell. So in thinking about it and looking at the colors and thinking about what I want to talk about, I pulled out Chamel's box of crayons because, as I said, I keep everything by either line or by manufacturer. And it just kind of went, you know, it's got lots of neutrals, and even though there are a bunch of blues, you can treat blue as kind of a clothing neutral. A lot of people wear blue in their clothing. So for me, box of crayons, I thought that might work. So I pulled it out and I was immediately actually drawn to this piece of paper, which has the lemons and the oranges and the strawberries on it, not so much because of the colors, but because of the subject content. And this is why I like to pick my page kits with the photos included. Some scrapbookers just make page kits and add photos later. Once again, totally fine, personal choice. But for me, I like to have the photos included when I make my page kits. So obviously this is very bright and not what I would use as a full background. So I know I need to add something else in here as well. And I think I like these green polka dots. It's not a full sheet of paper, and it has the cameras I can use to fussy cut out as well. But that's like super duper bright. So what I'm thinking I'm going to do is grab a piece of cardstock. Now I'm thinking I might want to do some mixed media. So I'm going to grab a piece of marshmallow cardstock. I may or may not gesso it depending on what type of mixed media I decide to do, but that's something I can do at the crop, no big deal. So I grabbed this piece of marshmallow cardstock. I've got a full sheet of 12 by 12, and the back side is, I don't hate it. Let's go with that. I could use it as a mat, no problem. I'd be totally okay with that. So I think I'm good with my paper. I'm just gonna kind of poke through here. I've got a couple more. Oh, look, I've got some of those cameras already set. So I'll pull those in. This was left over from a, what do you call it? A cut file. So I kept them just in case I'm going to use them, but I don't think they're going to go with that. I don't need that big of a journaling spot for that. I do have 2 of these. Work, believe, okay, hope and dream, play, create, love, share. Nope, none of these are going to work for my title, so I'm not going to bother using that. I also have the sticker sheet here, and this floral would work if I've got another one. I do have another one. So what I'm going to do is I grab my wax paper. And no, there is no relation. I do not get a cut of that money. Wouldn't that be nice? And I just go ahead and pull out any stickers that I think might work. I don't want to go overboard. Anything I don't use, I can obviously just put right back. But I don't necessarily like to do that. So, oh, and look, there's one with the oranges on it. Any more of those? There is not. I also have the sticker sheet, sticker book, and I'm just going to go ahead. I don't necessarily have an idea of what I want my title to be, and I don't normally put alphas in there, but because this came in the sticker sheet set, I went ahead and kept it like that. Now I have more floral stickers, but I don't think I want to add that. I do have some of this washi, but I don't think I want, that's too busy, but I do actually like the one with the strawberries. So I think I'm gonna go ahead and trim that out. And then if I can pick that up, I can try mightily to cut it without cutting into either washi strip. So like I said, I just make the decisions. I don't spend a ton of time like overthinking it. I just go with what is going, you know, what strikes my eye. I've got a lemon and you're so sweet, or you're sweet. Yeah, you're so sweet. Yeah. I can read. Yay. And then I'm looking at the word, and I don't think anything works. I do like the strawberry. Going with my fruit theme here. And let me get this back in the booklet. Except that doesn't go in the booklet, you dum-dum. The booklet goes in that. And then we're all set with that. I have these, oh, I've got this. I'm going to use this. And then I'm going to finish off this package. And we are just going to trim this down so that way it's not massive in there. Yay, I'm happy now. And I've got a couple pieces of fruit in here. I've got a strawberry, an orange slice, and a lime slice. And now what I have left is my writing pad, and I'm going to see if I can find a journaling spot in here. I've got a bunch of things at the beginning that I tend to use to trim out. You know what? I'm going to add this, and what I think I'm going to do is trim out this cloud and use this. I don't necessarily need that much, so I'll probably trim it off, but I actually really like the thought of using that. All right, so now I've gone through everything I own in Chamel Box of Crayons, which I happen to have quite a bit of. All right, and this is what I look at. Do I have enough paper? I definitely think I do. Do I have something that has a texture to it? I have this, and I have the puffy stickers. Do I have something that will work as a base for a layer? Yes, I do, and I do have something to journal with. I never add alphas in, as I said, I almost never add alphas into my page kits. So what I'm going to do is I will bring a selection of thickers and alphabets, and I will use that for the rest of my title. The only thing I'm thinking I need for this are some enamel dots, and I happen to have a strip of lime green ones right there. So as I said, I've been making page kits, so this, I had them, just a strip of them left over. So here we go. We have my page kit for this layout. I'm going to grab one of the plastic bags. You can get these on Amazon. I will link them below. I just keep all of mine that come from various purchases. As I said, I did buy some off of Amazon, and I just reuse these buddies until they fall apart. I've had several of mine for several years. So when I say until I fall apart, I literally mean until they fall apart. I think I said I fall apart. I meant they fall apart. All right, so here is my page kit. One page kit down. So now just 14 more to go rather than 15. All right, we're going to move on to the next part of this. I'm just going to clean up a little bit first. Be right back. All right, so now that I've shown you how to make a page kit, or how I make a page kit, and you saw that was completely real time, I didn't speed anything up, I just go and I try to make as many decisions as I can really quickly. You know, here's the thing, if you get to the crop, and here's why I bring 34 to 35, even though I know I'm not going to make it there, make it to that many. If I get to the crop and I pull out that page kit and I say, I really don't like this. I don't like it with the photo. I don't like the vibe it's giving me. I can simply put it back and I have plenty of choices for other things to work on. So I know I'm not going to make more than, say, at the very most, 23, 24, because I've never made more than that at a crop. That gives me 10 different options to choose from if I don't like the first one I choose. So I just wanted to give you an idea of, you know, how I do it, a way to do it. Obviously, you should do what works for you best. Okay, so now let's move on to journaling. So journaling is interesting in the fact that it's actually something that I take seriously and that I want to make sure I have written correctly. So I think with journaling, trying to do it at a crop is incredibly hard, and you shouldn't force yourself to do it. So I do one of two things. I either know that I'm not going to do it at the crop, and I'll make sure to leave a space for the journaling. I may get a post-it note, jot down some of the things I want to journal and put it on it. And then when I get home and I'm unpacking my stuff from the crop, at that point, I will go ahead and do all of my journaling. Another way to do it, and this is the way I normally do it, and it's actually what I've already done for this crop, is I pre-write all of my journaling. I'm going to show you something after I finish this section where I'll go into what that looks like. So I pre-write all of my journaling on a computer document. I use Google Drive, and I just take from the list of layouts I have, I put it onto a Word document, and then I just write out my journaling for all of my layouts. And I do this, I did it in about 3 different sit down and just journal for 20 minutes. And for me, it just works out so much easier than all I'm doing is when I get to the crop, I look at the journaling for that layout, I copy it down, and I'm good to go. And it just makes my life a whole lot easier. I'm not trying to think of the right words while people are talking to me. I'm not being distracted by noises going around in the room, because when you are scrapbooking with other people in the room, it is going to be noisier normally than when you are scrapbooking by yourself. All right, now another thing you can do to make your crop time easier is to use sketches. Now, whether you get them off Pinterest, whether you get them from a Kit Club, several of them put them out, several designers put them out, whether you make your own, whether you hand draw them, or if you do as I do, I make very simple sketches on Windows Publisher. I have a video of me showing you how I do this, and I will link it in the description box below. I'm also going to show you some of the sketches I've made up for this crop in the next section of this video, along with showing you the journaling I've done. So it's just a really simple way to make your life a little easier, especially when if you have a double page layout and you've got 9 photos and you're just wanting to make sure you've got what looks good to you, a sketch may be the way to go. As I've said many times before, obviously do what works for you. If you don't like sketches and you don't use sketches, don't take this advice. Just use what works for you. All right, we are almost to the next section of this video. This video is going to be voiced over. I'm going to be showing you my computer screen with a couple of the digital things I do to prepare for a crop. Now, these are, as I was speaking of before, my pre-typed journaling, the sketches that I make up, and also my packing list. So I like to have a very specific packing list. This is a personal choice. You obviously do not have to do this. What I do is for flying to a crop, I have a 3-part list. It's in a Google Doc in a spreadsheet. I have my scrapbooking section in which I list everything I'm bringing and what bag it's packed in. Then I have my electronics section with the same information, and then I have my personal section, and that's stuff like my clothing and my toiletries. And once again, I have where those are packed as well. It just gives me an idea of where things fit, what works from trip to trip, and that's what I like to do. If I've just given you hives, you do not have to do that. As I said, this is made for me, and I just want to share what works for me. So I'm going to go ahead and get over to that part of the video. Before I do that, I did want to talk specifically about the questions that were asked. I put out a community post and I said if you had any questions to ask it. And there were a couple. One was that, do you buy duplicates for when you're going to a crop? Not really. I have some storage things that I only use when I go to a crop because they fold flat, so they're easy to transport, that I don't use in my normal scrapbooking day. So not really. I just don't go to crops that often that I found that to be necessary. And then the other question that was asked, what specifically can or can't you bring when you're going, when you're flying to a crop? So there's really only 3 things you need to make sure you're aware of, or 4 things, sorry. First is that you keep with you, i.e. in your carry-on luggage, the stuff that is irreplaceable. So that flip-flops when you're flying to a crop versus when you're flying home. When I fly to a crop, I make sure to take all of my photos and the scrapbooking stuff that is hard to get, meaning like the pattern paper and the embellishments and stuff like that. Whereas I will put into my check luggage scissors, rulers, glue, all of that stuff, minus anything that's liquid that you can't bring with you. Any of that stuff, because while I could reprint my photos and I possibly could find some pattern paper at a Michael's or a Joann somewhere, it's far easier for me to find a ruler or some glue versus trying to find American Crafts somewhere. So I keep anything that would be super hard to replace scrapbooking wise on my carry-on. Now, when I fly home, it's slightly different. Now, I don't necessarily, if they lost my luggage, I wouldn't cry if my leftover pattern paper were lost for a couple days. If my completed layouts were lost for a while or damaged in transit, I would be very, very upset. So now my completed layouts go into my carry-on luggage and the other stuff goes into my checked luggage. Another thing you have to be aware of when flying is you are only allowed up to 50 pounds, and I think that's pretty much an industry standard for your checked luggage. Now, I'm flying Southwest, so I get 2 bags for free. So that's another thing to think about. Just because your ticket is cheaper, if you're bringing 1 to 2 bags on another airline that does charge for luggage, that can be $25 to $50 to $75, depending on whether you're a frequent flyer who has bonus items, including free luggage. So that's just something to think about. I definitely suggest purchasing one of those luggage weighers that I got mine, I think, at Target, and it just has a little hook and a weight scale thingy, and you just hook it onto the strap of your luggage and you lift it up a few inches off the ground, and it shows you how much your luggage weighs, and that way you know before you get to the airport that you are either overweight or you're good to go with plenty of room. Another thing to think about is your liquids. So you are allowed a quart size bag of liquids to carry on through the security line that doesn't get checked. And each of those individual containers has to be less than 2 ounces. It cannot, even if a 3 ounce or 4 ounce bottle can fit into the quart size bag, it is too big as an individual bottle to go through. Now, I am not saying that this will never be let through. It absolutely will by some TSA agents, but it also may be flagged by some TSA agents, and I actually have personal proof of this. Hang on 1 second. This is a 4 ounce bottle of liquid glue. It does fit in the quart size bag diagonally. I just had this and I think some gold Heidi Swapp color shine, and that was all I was bringing for liquids. I had this, and so on the way to where I was going, I was able to take this on the airplane. I did not bring a checked bag. I just had my carry-on. But when I was returning home, the TSA in the city I was in said, nope, it's more than 2 ounces. You can't bring it. They did let me unscrew my fine line bottle and take that with me as it was solid, but I was not allowed to take my bottle of glue through with me. So I understand someone's like, oh, I got through with that and I got through with that, and that's great and wonderful. And just saying, I have had both experiences and I just want to let you know. Now, the other thing to be careful of is the size of your scissors. TSA allows a blade up to 4 inches. This is my Glitter Girl scissors. The blade is just under 4 inches, but I do not want to have an argument with the TSA, so this one goes in my check bag, and I bring my Cutter Bee scissors in my carry-on just in case I lose something. I do have a little bit of scissors to work with. So I think those are the things you have to be careful of flying versus driving to a crop, or, if you're having to deal with carry-on versus checked luggage. If there's anything else, I will try to add it sometime in the video. All right, we're gonna go, as I said, over to the voiceover section where I'm showing you the computer screen of things I use digitally for preparing for a crop. Hey everyone, so being so intricate in my explanations about this thing just went way larger than I meant it to, so that is why I'm going to go ahead and split it into 2 videos. So this one where it's really more about the prepping portion, and then I will have another video out in a couple of days, probably probably a week from today, and that will be my actual packing for a crop. So I'm kind of just showing you an overview of my spreadsheet. I have a basic spreadsheet, this one here, and I just keep track of the sets of photos I have to make layouts that I've currently printed. I keep a number of photos and things like that, more for when I'm making sketches, less because I want to be that specific in my spreadsheet. So that way I'm like, oh, I have 8 photos for that one. I should probably make a sketch. So now going back to the spreadsheet I have for this specific crop, you can see I have a column with whether or not I've made a kit. All of these have been completed. There's more if I had scrolled down that you can see I have not completed. And then I have what layout it is. And this is not the title. It's simply like an idea, like camping or prom, or just an idea of that's a set of photos that is for that. I then have however number of photos I have, and then their orientations. Once again, that is to remind me, do I need a sketch? Oh, it's a 1-page photo, that'll be nice and quick. How many supplies I think I need for stuff like that. And here I'm showing you whether it's a single or double page. As you can see, I have a couple where it's on the cusp of whether I need a single or double page, and I needed to visually look at the photos to see. And then here is my column for whether or not I've made a sketch. As I've mentioned before, I usually don't make a sketch if it's a 1 or 2 photo layout. Anything more than that, especially for a crop, I do like to make up a sketch, simply because it makes my time go faster at the actual crop. And I'm using my pointer here to kind of point out, you see if there's a larger amount of photos, then I'm going to make a sketch. I also have a column for journaling, and here I'm showing you how I don't have actually everything completely complete. However, I do have all of my journaling done for the entire crop, so I don't have to worry about that. I just need to copy it from the file on my Google Drive. So I do have a section for if I think of a title, and I'll keep this not open, but I'll keep thinking about it occasionally up until the crop, because I might come up with a title that I think is pithy and clever, and I will write that down there on that column just to give me an idea of, you know, a good title for that particular layout. I don't have a lot of that. It's not something I necessarily actively do. It's just something that if something comes to mind, I'll go ahead and do it. I wanted to make sure I had enough time to talk about everything I wanted to talk about. So I apologize if there's a bit of silence in this part. Not that silence is usually a part of my voiceovers. So I'm like, it's going too long. All right, so now I'm going to go to another section that I do, and that is I take, I just copy everything that is from the layout. Once again, not my actual title, just an idea of what the title, not what the title is, but what the subject of the layout is going to be. So I copy that entire thing and then I go ahead and paste it into my journaling. And here's where, so I just have a whole list and then I just go ahead and I write out the journaling. I usually will write it in different sections, like I'll go ahead and write 5 or 6. And then what I will do is at some point I will go back and I will make sure I like the journaling before I go to the crop. It's not something that takes a ton of time. I just kind of type whatever comes to my brain. So how I do my journaling is I look at my photos, I look at my layout, and I say, if I was explaining this layout to someone, what would I want to say? And that's usually how I end up writing my journaling. So here's an example of one of the sketches I drew up. I use Windows Publisher. Um, the only things set to size are I set everything at half size. So the page, this one is 12 by 24. In reality, I set it at 6 by 12. And so the photos are half size as well. The only thing I make sure to do, because I don't own doubles of all of my papers, anything where you see it is that darker pattern paper, I make sure I set it no bigger than what would be actually 6 inches so that I can use one piece of 12 by 12 and cut it in half to stretch that along the layout. So, because I can never guarantee that I have purchased 2 pieces of the exact same pattern paper to be, say, like 8 inches across. I realized I could make that much larger. So, as I said, I just use Windows Publisher. There's nothing fancy about it. It doesn't take me a long time. Once again, it's just something that, works well for me to make my crop time not quicker, but it just makes me more productive, makes my brain have to work a little less so I can concentrate on conversations and making sure I'm having a good time, basically. I don't want to, be sitting there for an hour going, I've got 7 photos and I don't know where to put them. So, I can go to the crop and just go, oh, there's my sketch. Oh, and I don't have to follow it 100%. It might be that, I need to move one photo up or one photo down, or where that vertical one is and that horizontal 4 by 6, they're looking off the page. So I need to swap them. So, you just have to try to, you know, make things work for you. And that's a lot of what I think about when I'm scrapbooking is what works for me, what supplies work for me, what planning works for me. And that's what I try to follow in general as part of my hobby. All right, I think I'm almost done here. I think I'm going to show you my packing list next. Once I do that, that is going to end this portion of the video. This will go up, and then, as I said, in a week, I'll have my packing one up because I do need to actually physically pack everything before I go. One thing I will talk about in the packing video is clothing choices, because I did forget to do that in this particular one, so I will talk about that then. So here is my packing list, and as I said, I've got multiple tabs of this because I have things like if I'm driving to a crop, obviously I pack a little bit differently.
So that's another separate tab. So what I have a tab for scrapbooking, and as you can see, I have each item listed. I don't necessarily say like 15 flair. I just say I'm bringing some flair. And as I said, in the packing video, I will show you exactly how I actually pack that. And so basically what I do is I have the item and then where I plan to pack it. And then I leave a column to X out when I pack it. And then I leave a second column to X out when I pack it when I'm leaving. So that way I'm just not forgetting everything. Anything, not everything. I wouldn't forget everything. So this is my scrapbooking tab. And then as you can see, I also have an electronics tab and a personal tab. So the electronics tab is just as you can see, it's my electronics, and then my personal tab is my clothing and my toiletries. So here on the scrapbooking, I have what's going in which bag. I have, you know, some things are going into a large zip bag that then is going to go into my suitcase. And then I have ones that are going to go into a backpack, ones that are going to go into my carry-on. So I'm very specific with this, and this is where it goes somewhat into the crazy realm, and I am totally, I understand that. And here's what I'm talking about, where I check it off when I'm packing and stuff like that. Um, I'm not talking, I'm visually showing it to you, but I am trying to match it up with the voiceover, and I'm not doing a very good job. But basically, you're seeing a visual overview, and I'm talking about various things. So, as I was saying, I haven't, like, and here's the thing is, it may be that I try packing it into a backpack and then find out, you know what, that's really not the best way. So, what I'll do is I'll pack it somewhere else, and then I'll just come back to this list and I'll change that. So when I went last time, I had purchased a new backpack and I used it for a trip I went on, and I found that I was not using it to its full advantage. So I did end up changing it up for this trip. So what you see here right now, it might change a little bit because I'm just kind of going off a supposition of what is going to happen. All right, folks, that is it for this portion of the video. I will, as I said, be back with the other portion of the video in a week. Thank you guys so much for joining me here. If you have any questions, just let me know. As I said, I will try to link anything I mentioned in this video in the description box below. So hopefully that answers your questions. But obviously, please feel free to drop a comment if you feel I didn't answer, if I didn't link what you needed me to do. If you could flick me a thumbs up, that would be super awesome. Thanks so much. Look forward to part 2. Bye.